The whale did not attack a legend. It attacked a real wooden ship. And when it was over, 20 men were left in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, with 3 small boats, almost no food, and no land in sight. The ship was called Essex. She was not a warship, not a pirate vessel, and not a grand ship of empire. She was a whaling ship from Nantucket, Massachusetts. To the men who sailed on her, she was work, danger, money, and home. But in 1820, the Essex became something else. She became one of the most terrifying survival stories in maritime history. And decades later, her destruction would help inspire one of the most famous sea stories ever written, Moby-Dick. But the real story was not a novel. It began with a ship leaving port. In August 1819, the Essex sailed from Nantucket under Captain George Pollard, Jr. Nantucket was one of the great whaling centers of the world. Its ships crossed enormous distances in search of sperm whales because whale oil was valuable. It lit homes, powered industries, and made fortunes. But finding it meant sailing farther and farther into dangerous waters. The Essex was already an old ship. She had made profitable voyages before, and she had a reputation for luck. That mattered to sailors. At sea, luck could feel almost as important as skill. The crew expected a hard voyage. They expected storms, hunger, injury, and months away from land. What they did not expect was that the ocean itself would seem to strike back. The voyage was difficult from the beginning. The ship faced rough weather, long passages, repairs, and the endless labor of keeping a wooden vessel alive. Whaling was not clean or romantic work. When whales were sighted, small boats were lowered from the ship. Men rowed toward animals larger than anything around them, armed with harpoons and rope. If the harpoon struck, the whale could drag the boat across the water at terrifying speed. One wrong move could smash a boat, pull a man under, or leave the crew helpless far from the ship. This was the normal danger of the job. Then came November 20th, 1820. The Essex was far out in the Pacific, more than 1,000 miles from the nearest land. The crew had found whales. The small boats were away from the ship. First Mate Owen Chase was back on board, repairing a damaged whaleboat, when the men saw a large sperm whale nearby. It was behaving strangely. It was huge, even for a sperm whale. Then it turned toward the Essex. The first strike shook the ship. The whale rammed the wooden hull with enough force to damage her badly. For a moment, the crew could not understand what had happened. A whale was supposed to be hunted from small boats. It was not supposed to attack the ship itself. But the animal came again. This time it struck the Essex head-on. The impact opened the ship to the sea. Water began pouring in. The men had only minutes to save what they could. They cut away supplies, gathered navigation tools, loaded bread, water, and equipment into the whaleboats. Then they abandoned the ship that had carried them across the world. The Essex sank slowly behind them. Around them was the Pacific. Not the romantic Pacific of maps and paintings. The empty Pacific. The kind of ocean that makes a human life feel almost weightless. There were 20 men. There were 3 small open boats. There was not enough food. There was not enough water. And the nearest land was so far away that every choice could kill them. At first, the men had to decide where to go. There were islands closer than South America, but the crew feared them. Stories about hostile islands and cannibals shaped their thinking. So instead of steering for nearer land, they chose a longer and more punishing route across open ocean. It was a decision made from fear, limited knowledge, and the map inside their heads. Every day in the boats made survival smaller. The sun burned them. Salt water soaked their clothes and skin. Their food spoiled. Their mouths dried out. Storms threatened to overturn the boats. At night, the ocean was a black moving wall around them. The men were not simply waiting to be rescued. They were trying to navigate. They were trying to ration. They were trying to stay sane. But small boats are not ships. There is nowhere to hide from weather. There is nowhere to stand and stretch properly. There is no real sleep. There is only wood, water, hunger, and time. After weeks at sea, they reached Henderson Island. For a moment, it looked like salvation. There was land beneath their feet. There were birds, fish, and a chance to stop drifting. But the island could not support them for long. Most of the men chose to leave again, hoping to reach a place where rescue was possible. 3 stayed behind. The rest returned to the boats. The second part of the journey became even worse. The boats separated. Food ran out. Water ran out. Men became too weak to row. Some died. Then the story entered its darkest part. To survive, some of the men were forced into acts that later made the Essex infamous. The crew's ordeal included cannibalism. It is the part of the story people remember most, but it should not be treated like a cheap shock. It was the result of starvation, isolation, fear, and a world with no help coming. The ocean had reduced a working ship's crew to desperate survivors in open boats. When rescue finally came, only a few men remained alive. 8 of the original 20 survived. Some were found in boats. The men left on Henderson Island were rescued later. Captain Pollard survived. Owen Chase survived. But survival did not mean the story ended. The men carried the Essex with them. Chase wrote an account of the disaster. Another survivor, Thomas Nickerson, later recorded his own memories. The story spread because it was almost impossible to believe. A whale had not only fought back, it had destroyed the ship. For sailors, that idea was terrifying. The sea was already dangerous enough. Storms could sink a ship. Fire could destroy it. Bad navigation could lose it. But the Essex suggested something even darker. The hunted creature could become the force that ended the hunt. That is why the story lasted. It was not only about a shipwreck. It was about human confidence meeting something older, larger, and completely beyond control. The Essex was small compared with the Pacific. The men were smaller still. Their tools, maps, discipline, and courage mattered. But they were not enough to command the ocean. That is the real horror of the Essex. Not only that a whale sank a ship, not only that men starved in open boats, but that the whole disaster began with people believing they understood the rules of the sea. They believed the ship was the center of the hunt. They believed the whale was the target. Then, in a few violent minutes, those roles reversed. The Essex disappeared beneath the waves, and the men who survived learned that at sea, a wooden ship is not a fortress. It is only a fragile line between human ambition and the deep.